Welcome to episode 15 of Shane Talks 99. It's April 16th, 1999, and it's going to be an interesting episode because for the first time, we've got three movies that I don't really have a whole lot of personal stuff to say on. Two out of the three of them. First one was an art house film that I know played at Castleton Arts. Second one was a movie that I didn't know anything about until it came out on video when I was working at a video store. I know it didn't play at a mainstream theater, but I remember taking it home and watching it from the video store I worked at. And then finally, we did have one mainstream movie released this week. It was a movie that I didn't remember liking very much. Like, it's not like I hated it or anything, but I just remembered it being very blah. A lot better 22 years later, 23 years later, giving it another go. So, yeah, we're looking forward to talking about that movie. So first up, what we've got is Pedro Almodovar's All About My Mother. Sadly, I've never seen any of Pedro Almodovar's films. He's just not a director that's made anything that I've personally been like, oh, I really want to see that. But doing my research on this one this week, I definitely feel like I need to make sure I watch this one soon. It is available to rent on Apple, but I did not, unfortunately, make the time to do that this week. So yeah, kind of disappointed in myself, but I do plan to watch this soon. I know a lot of my art house friends love this movie and really like his work, so I've heard amazing stuff about him. This plot seems to be somewhat a little bit ahead of its time. The topics of stuff like transgender wasn't very well represented in mainstream movies in the 90s, but a lot of art house movies, and this one, All About My Mother being one of them, definitely represents minority groups like this. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see, the take back in the 90s, how it was represented and stuff. As far as the cast of this movie goes, the only person on the cast that I recognize the name is Penelope Cruz, and she doesn't even play like one of the leads. She's one of the smaller side characters in the movie. So yeah, while I was doing my research, I found out that this movie has won a ton of awards, writing, directing, acting awards. It won Best Picture or Best Foreign Language Film at the Academy Awards that in 2000. It's won BAFTAs. It's won a Golden Globe. It's won multiple Goya Awards. It won the Cannes Best Director and Festival Prize when it was at Cannes. So it's a super popular, well-received movie, and one that I definitely need to make the time to watch. Again, like I said, it's not available. I couldn't find the DVD when I was looking for it anywhere. It's not on any streaming services, but you can rent it on iTunes, or you can rent or buy it on iTunes. But I was not able to stream it for free. So that's our first film that was released this week. I know for a fact it played at Castleton Arts. This next movie, despite the fact that it said it got a wide release, I don't ever remember it being in theaters. In 2000, I was working at a video store. I remember taking it home from the video store one night. It's a movie called Friends and Lovers, kind of an ensemble cast. Robert Downey Jr. is in it, and that's the real reason that I was interested in watching the movie. At that time, he'd just been, done with U.S. Marshals, and In Dreams had also come out in 1999. So I was a big Robert Downey Jr. fan, wanted to check this out. Again, I know it was 2000 when I actually watched the movie for the first time. So yeah, like I didn't mention this. The poster for All About My Mother is a classic poster that I have seen a million times in my life. Like, I know it was up in Castleton Arts a lot, and I think it even stayed up after the movie came out. I don't know if they moved it to like a different section of the lobby. But like, I remember the All About My Mother poster vividly, and I even think in 2000 when Jason and I were filming our horror film Consternate, I'm pretty sure that this poster is in the movie. I should have gone back this week and watched my own film to verify if that's true or not, but I really remember there are scenes in Consternate that has the All About My Mother poster in the scene. So I think it just got moved somewhere else into the Castleton Arts lobby, and that's where it was. So the box art for Friends and Lovers is what got me to watch it, or to want to watch it, other than Robert Downey Jr. being in it. But it did a very 90s thing where it had, I call it like the Brady Bunch shot. Like, it had 9 boxes on the front, that the 8 around the outside were all the cast members' headshots, and then in the very center square was the title of the film, Friends and Lovers. Obviously, Robert Downey Jr. is one of those faces on the box art, and it really just made me go, oh, I really, want to watch this movie because he's in it. So aside from Robert Downey Jr., it also has Leon in it, who I love him from Cool Runnings and then the film Above the Rim. So I really like him being in the movie. Other main character in the movie is played by Stephen Baldwin. The two main chicks in the movie are played by Allison Eastwood and Claudia Schiffer. Allison Eastwood is just a couple of years away from being the female lead in one of my all-time favorite movies, which is called Pool Hall Junkies. It came out in 2002. Like I said, she's the female lead of that. The plot of the movie is a very St. Elmo's Fire type thing. It's a bunch of late 20s or early 20 somethings who have been friends for a long period of time, trying to find love, trying to define their own personal views on love and relationships. They all end up getting invited through various, through Stephen Baldwin's character, they get invited to go to Stephen Baldwin's dad's. He's on a ski trip, and so he invites all of them to come on the ski trip with him. So they're outside of their element, they're isolated, they're talking and trying to figure out their thoughts and feelings on relationships. There is a homosexual character in the movie who has just recently decided he was gay, so he wants to lose his virginity throughout the course of the plot of the film. And again, much like All About Your Mother or All About My Mother, it was dealing with topics that weren't very mainstream topics at that point. They're obviously, in 2022, very mainstream to have that in a lot of films nowadays. But, back in the late 90s, it was much more of an indie film, low budget film was where these type of topics were talked about the most. So the film was written and directed by a guy named George Haas, who I had never heard of. So when I looked him up on IMDb, it's because he's never written or directed another movie since then. And he just never written and directed anything before this movie. So I didn't deep dive too much into him, but he apparently was just a one and done in Hollywood. So not really sure what's all going on with that. This film, unfortunately, is not available anywhere at all in any fashion. I couldn't find a DVD of it. I couldn't find a VHS tape of it either, but those, a little harder to come by. It's not streaming on any platform. It's not available to buy or rent on any streaming platforms. So, I wasn't able to go back and rewatch that this week. I'm really just kind of curious how the movie would hold up. Because again, like I said, I'm a huge fan of ensemble friend groups because St. Elmo's Fire is such a huge movie that I love. But I don't remember liking or hating this movie in any way. So I'm kind of neutral on it at the moment until I can try to watch it again. All right. Now, finally, our one big studio release that we had this week, April 16th of 1999, saw the release of the movie called Life. Life is available to stream on Peacock. That's where I got to watch it this week for free. And I'm really happy that I made time to rewatch this because, like I said, I remember the only other time I'd ever seen it was in 1999 in the theater when I watched it, at work. And I just remember being very blah about it. I didn't hate the movie, but it just wasn't something I cared about. Obviously, because I wasn't exactly their target demographic for it. Like, it has a huge African-American cast in this movie. I'll talk about the cast here in a second. But pretty much every white dude in the movie is a piece of shit and is portrayed very negatively. So I think that's why I possibly didn't like it back then. I was uncomfortable about it. Nowadays I'm far more comfortable with things like that, and it didn't bother me at all. And I actually was able to really enjoy the plot of this movie. So Life stars Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence, two big comedy giants, one from the 80s and one from the 90s, teaming up together to do a movie. Like, let's see, I grew up watching Eddie Murphy and things like Beverly Hills Cop and 48 Hours. And then Martin Lawrence, obviously I watched him on his own TV show, but then he did Bad Boys, which was one of my favorite action movies. He did a movie with Tim Robbins called Nothing to Lose in 1997, which has an amazing soundtrack, by the way. And so it was cool to see the two of these comedy giants coming together for a movie. And I, for whatever reason, before I watched it, I was like, oh man, I remember they didn't really work well together. Like it was two different styles of comedy. Like they didn't have a good relationship. Again, I don't know what I was thinking. Like their chemistry in this movie as leads works really well. So yeah, I don't really know why I disliked it so much back in 1999. The film is directed by Ted Demme. Rest in peace, Mr. Demme. He was a brilliant director. His favorite film of mine, well, he's got two that I really enjoy. Blow, which came out in 2001, was just next level amazing storytelling, in my opinion. Obviously, being nonlinear and the way that they tell the story, I really enjoy Blow that he did. He also then did a film called Beautiful Girls, which I've talked about before on the regular Shane Talks podcast. It was the inspiration for like the TV series October Road. But yeah, Beautiful Girls, kind of about the life of the guy who wrote the film Con Air. Just yeah, a really cool, well done movie that he did. Absolutely one of my favorite films. And then finally, he also did the comedy with Dennis Leary called The Ref, which is a dark comedy, a black comedy, but really well done. Ted Demme, amazing director. He had a heart attack at age 38, which was back in I think 2002 ish. And man, it's really sad to know that he could have made 20 more years of awesome movies had that not happened. So kind of disappointing. In life, Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence get mixed up with each other. That like at the beginning of the movie, they don't know each other. They happen to be at the same nightclub. They randomly get paired up together. They end up going on a bootlegging run together. While they're on this bootlegging run, they get involved with the dead body. The dead body was actually by one of the sheriffs in town, killed this guy, and he ends up framing our two leads for it, and they end up getting sentenced to life in prison, hence where the title Life comes from. I think storytelling wise, one of the things that got me bothered the first time that I watched it is because like this movie was called Life, and the trailer kind of made it play out that like we were going to watch their lives over this long period of time that they were in jail, and technically that is what happens. But like the first 30 minutes of the movie aren't in prison. So I kind of just felt like there was, a long buildup to getting them into prison. Then they're young in prison for like the next 40 minutes of the movie. And this is a movie that's only like an hour and a half, I think. So you've got a long period of time of them being their same age. A couple of years go by in the beginning to like get them established in the prison and whatnot, but they're still just young characters. It's only like the last 20 minutes of the movie that actually like jumps ahead a couple of times in time to see them at older ages. And of course, like every typical comedy, this has the I don't want to be your friend anymore. Granted, they were never really friends when they first got to prison, but they developed a friendship. But they've got the breakup scene, about a little over an hour into the movie. And then it takes them, years. That's when the first time jump happens, was when they finally, years later, mend their friendship and go back to being friends. So like only the last 20 minutes of them is really them being old. So I think the first time I watched it, I just expected more of a drawn out, like, every few minutes was going to go ahead a few years. Like we were going to see like, I guess maybe like vignettes or clips of like, stuff that was going on over the course of the, all the, 40 or 50 years that they're locked up. Well, I mean, I guess it goes to 97. They were locked up in the late 20s. So I guess it's been, I don't know, 70-ish years. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Much like the Shawshank Redemption, our lead characters in their old age end up finding out who it was that framed them, and they actually find out in front of the superintendent that they're working for. It's a character played by Ned Beatty. So Ned Beatty ends up shooting and killing the corrupt police officer that set them up back in the day. But before he has the chance to actually give them pardons, he has a heart attack. So very similar to Shawshank Redemption, we as the audience know that they should be released. I mean, we've known since the beginning, but the characters have the ability where they should be released. And then the speed of plot has them stay in jail because the superintendent has that heart attack. So the old version of the corrupt cop is played by Arlie Emery. Fantastic character actor, most notable for Full Metal Jacket, but he did stuff like the 2003 remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He was also in the film Seven. He does the voice of Sarge in the Toy Story films. Like he is well-known character actor for playing characters, in law enforcement and stuff like that. Let's look at this all-star cast of inmates that life wraps up together for us. I'm going to butcher his name, and I apologize ahead of time. Ubaba Babunte. He is a smooth looking African American gentleman. He was in films like The Net, That Thing You Do. He was in How High and Black Dynamite. And honestly, from growing up, the main thing I remember him in is he appeared on 2 episodes of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, playing the character of Gordy Berry of Motown. So that's pretty cool. We recently talked about Clarence Williams III when we talked about the Mod Squad. He was one of the original cast members of the Mod Squad. He played Link's uncle in the remake of it. He is in this film as one of the inmates. We've got Bernie Mac, the comedian, in here as an inmate, kind of playing a dumb character. I don't really like his character, but it's cool to see, a young Bernie Mac. So we got a young Bernie Mac, and we have a large Anthony Anderson, like literally, like when he first appeared on screen, I was like, man, that dude looks a lot like Anthony Anderson, but like he's huge. It wouldn't be too much longer after this movie before Anthony Anderson dropped a lot of pounds, because when he did his 2 DMX movies in the very early 2000s, he's about half the size that he is in life. Like Anthony Anderson is a very large gentleman in this movie. Very glad to see that he got his physical aspects under control and whatnot. Bokeem Woodbine is in this movie. He's known from Dead Presidents, The Rock, and Gridlocked. Miguel A. Nunez Jr. is one of the inmates. He is most notable for being the lead actor in Juwanna Mann. Not the greatest film, but good for his career. Guy Torry is another one of the roommates, and Guy Torry, very, very little known actor. But aside from seeing him in this movie, he was in the 1997 film American History X, which is an absolutely phenomenal movie. And his character is literally probably the best character in the entire film. He plays Lamont, who is Derek's workmate in prison. They fold the laundry together, and the evolution of their friendship throughout the course of American History X is the greatest story arc in the entire film. They go from Derek hates him and refuses to talk to him, and Lamont just is a chattermouth and just keeps talking and talking and talking. And then they eventually get on the subject of basketball, which is something that Derek actually likes. And that breaks him, where they start talking about Magic and Worthy and Kareem and Larry Bird, and just that breakdown of their what becomes a friendship. Guy Torry is a phenomenal actor and is one of the best parts of American History X. His character is literally the one that helps Derek overcome all of his racist ideologies, and so like probably the most important character in the entire movie. Benjamin Sisko from Deep Space Nine is also a very important character in that movie, but not on the same level as what Lamont brings to it. We have an absolutely beautiful woman in this film. Her name is Sanaa Lathan. She is 1 year away from being the lead of Love and Basketball, which I have always said is probably one of my favorite sports movies that's ever been made. Noah Emmerich is also in this film. Next year in 2000, he's going to be in the film Frequency. He plays a baseball scout in this film who ends up getting one of the prisoners pardoned because he actually can play baseball really well, kind of showing some of that corruption and stuff. A guy that's there on a life sentence, because he's good at sports, gets out of jail and prison. We got 2 musicians that have small parts in this movie. The rapper Heavy D, who unfortunately has also passed away. He's in this film, as well as musician Rick James, who, when I was doing some reading and research on this, I didn't realize that the last few years of Rick James's career had really declined. Like, he was not as popular as he was, in the 70s and 80s. The Dave Chappelle sketch actually completely reinvigorated his career just a couple of months before he ended up passing away. So very cool. But yeah, so Rick James also has a role in this movie. So that is a huge cast that is involved in this film, and they all do really well. And it's overall a pretty fun movie. I'm glad I rewatched it. I'm really glad I've changed my opinion on what I remember it being when I saw it for the first time in 1999. It also, I had forgotten about the twist ending that there is in the movie, but in the opening scene that foreshadows how the film ends, I remembered, oh yeah, this is what happens to them while they're in prison. So very, very worthwhile watching. I laughed a lot. It was a pretty well done movie. Next week is going to be packed. Next week is a at least 3 out of the 4 movies that I really enjoy. I'm going to be interested to see how one of them holds up. But first up is Election, the Reese Witherspoon, Matthew Broderick film, vote flick. Um, I remember absolutely dying laughing. I know Chris Klein is also in the movie. So I'm looking forward to watching that one again. It's been a while since I've seen that. Existenz, just watched it a couple of years ago, still holds up. We talked about Sarah Polley a couple of weeks ago with Go. I'm going to watch. Existenz is low on my list because I watched it so recently, but it's one of my favorite sci-fi flicks that's ever been made. Then the third one I'm excited for is Pushing 10, the Billy Bob Thornton, Angelina Jolie movie, which obviously they were together back in the late 90s. This was around the time that I started getting a huge crush on her. I'd seen her in Hackers and whatnot, but like it wouldn't be until Gone in 60 Seconds that like my crush overfloweth. But so Pushing 10 was kind of one of the starts of developing a crush on Angelina Jolie. Going to be interested to see how that holds up. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've watched it. I don't remember a lot of it, so gonna be interested to see how good it is now. The last film, the one that I'm not as excited to watch because I remember not enjoying it very much, is the David Spade film Lost and Found, which I remember not liking at all, and I'm not excited about rewatching it. But much like with life, I may end up just having a really good time. So those are the 4 films I'm going to try to cover next week. Try to get through them as quick as I can and not make it too long. I know I said I didn't have a lot to say about these 3 movies, but still made it a decent episode. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys next week.